Russia is moving on a war footing to try and contain the coronavirus pandemic. It has quarantined thousands of soldiers and imposed lockdowns in regions with relatively fewer numbers of cases. Experts are now asking whether Russia's frantic response hints at a larger problem. Now let's first talk about the fatality rate. 405 out of Russia's 47,000 patients have succumbed to the virus, which brings the fatality rate to around 0.8%. Now, to put this into perspective, China had more than 1,100 deaths at the same point during their outbreak, and the United States had around 700. Now, this has led to some commentators questioning the authenticity of Russia's data. The country's response also seems disproportionate to the number of cases. The only explanation is that the government is anticipating a massive explosion of cases like we saw in the United States. Virus cases have been reported in most of Russia's 80-plus regions, and a lockdown has been in place for close to 3 weeks. Russian President Vladimir Putin has been trying to distance himself from the outbreak, but on Monday he admitted that the country's infection curve was yet to peak, basically asking his citizens to brace for a grim future. Moscow has become the virus hotspot in Russia, accounting for more than half of the national death toll. The region is said to be 2 or 3 weeks away from reaching the virus peak.
Пик заболеваемости, вероятнее всего, придется на следующие 2-3 недели. В эти дни именно вы находитесь на передовой. На вас ложится основная нагрузка по борьбе с вирусом. Сегодня от нас с вами зависит, как Москва справится с пандемией. От всех. От вас, как врачей, от жителей, которые будут соблюдать установленные правила, от нас, как управленцев, которые должны принимать своевременные и адекватные ситуации решения.
In response, the government has decided to impose preemptive lockdowns to control the outbreak. But Russian residents are not too thrilled. In the southern city of Vladikavkaz, hundreds gathered to protest the economic woes associated with the lockdown. Businesses have shut down and many people have been rendered jobless over the last few weeks. Residents argue that the relatively low COVID-19 numbers in their city do not warrant such strict response. President Vladimir Putin has reluctantly decided to postpone the traditional Victory Day celebration, which falls on the 9th of May. Every year, thousands of Russian troops march through Moscow to mark the Soviet Union's victory in World War II. This year was supposed to mark the 75th anniversary. All 15,000 soldiers who were expected to take part have been sent back to their garrisons, and they will be placed under isolation for 14 days. While the government says this is nothing more than a precaution, media reports in Russia hint at a possible outbreak among the soldiers. Our correspondent Dan Ashby has sent us this report from Moscow.
Well, if you're talking about those protests, I just think it's the economic impact of quarantining and lockdown. Of course, Moscow, as you say, is the centre of the lockdown, the strictest measures taking place here in Moscow, forcing many businesses to shut and threatening their futures, of course, because they're having to lay off employees. Despite the fact there has been an economic package from the government, many Moscow businesses, particularly those small and medium businesses, are really feeling it. But now, as you say, we're starting to see that anger spill out into other regions of Russia, those protests over in the east, with people demanding that the head of the regional government step down, that quarantine measures are eased, because I think they don't yet feel the threat of this pandemic, but they are already feeling those economic pains coming to their companies and their businesses. They are worried that in a country with very little social welfare and social support for people, that they might be under threat economically.